if whenever she hits record. Yep, perfect. We're going to get started now. So, as you all know, the rural childcare system is facing a state of emergency. The pressure is absolutely immense for the centers themselves, the staff, parents, and more. And what we're doing today is a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to bring so many of us together who are working in our own pockets of rural America to compound our impact. It's kind of like we're, combining our powers to make them stronger. And this really is a public good. Fixing or working on the childcare system will really have a huge impact on our economy. And I'd like to just share, personally, we actually are doing this session because I want to say it was in the fall that we got a contact from Nancy Jost, our speaker today, who reached out and just said, I see what you're doing with Radically Rural. What are you doing to talk about childcare? And when I contacted her to see what she had in mind and how we could involve that topic in our programming, I said, how did you find us? And I don't even remember how she found us, but she said, it's like my personal mission to just always make sure that organizations and efforts are including childcare in the conversation. And so I really appreciate her initiative. And just a personal comment from me, this topic is near and dear to my heart. I'm a mother of 3 small kids, ages 3, 5, 6, and I am a working parent, obviously, and also am on the board for my kids' Montessori school. So it's interesting because on the one hand, I desperately wish that their, childcare was not as expensive, and yet seeing the budget on the side of the board, I also want to pay our teachers more. And so it's like this really hard combination of parents not being able to afford to pay more and teachers needing to get paid more, and where the pull is there. So I'm all ears for creative solutions and I'm excited to hear that. So a little bit about Nancy Jost. She's the director of early childhood at West Central Initiative for the past 18 years. She is a champion for advocating the best possible start for children toward a healthy life of learning, achieving, and succeeding. She has been a licensed family childcare provider, a childcare center teacher. She worked in early childhood special education, early childhood family education, school readiness, and childcare aware. For more than 45 years, this has been her work, her life, and her passion. Her list of activities and accomplishments is quite lengthy, so I hope you had a chance to read it on the registration link. One of my favorite things about her in her bio was that she loves hunting for treasures at garage sales and thrift stores, which woman after my own heart. That's actually, I have dreams about that, like just being able to spend time at a thrift store. So anyway, without further ado, I will let Nancy take it away, and then we'll have, toward the end, we'll have 20 or 30 minutes for discussion. Nancy, oh, you're muted.
Okay. Thank you, Juliana. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today because I love to talk about childcare. And I do often go on social media and read other people's what they have to say. And if I think they should be thinking about childcare, I'll let them know. So I guess as you get older, you just have no filter when it comes to that. But anyway, do you want to put up my PowerPoint, Lillian? Thank you. So the title of my presentation is really about supporting providers with more than money. And of course, money is needed. But because West Central Initiative and any other foundation is not going to be able to increase the pay of childcare providers, we have to think about what else we can do. And there's so much that we can do. And so today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. Next.
Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble doing the next slide. Give me 1 second.
It's okay. And while you're doing that, I'll just keep talking. So I work for West Central Initiative, which is a small rural community foundation. And I'm the director of early childhood there. And actually I've been there 19 years now. March is my anniversary month. So it encompasses, our region encompasses 9 counties and the White Earth Nation. We support an early childhood initiative. So we support an early childhood initiative coalition and a coordinator in each one of those counties and in White Earth. Each coalition meets about 10 times a year to discuss early childhood issues and then do what they can to support early childhood, especially childcare. Members of the early childhood initiative coalitions include childcare licensors, social service staff, public health, some county commissioners come, schools, Head Start, childcare providers, childcare aware, libraries, sometimes law enforcement, and many others, just people who are very interested in early childhood. And I think everyone should be interested in early childhood. Next. So we have a shortage of childcare in our region, and we have for many years. Actually, across our state and across our nation, there's a childcare shortage. So all of us, West Central Initiative, the ECI coordinators, childcare aware, and First Children's Finance, and the childcare licensors work together to recruit and retain providers. And COVID has not created, but exacerbated this shortage. So we're even working harder right now than ever before. We meet with childcare aware, First Children's Finance, the ECI, Early Childhood Initiative coordinators, and the childcare licensors quarterly to talk about ways we are and can better support childcare in our region. And many of our projects have come out of those conversations. So this is a childcare center that a little community opened up. It's called Battle Lake. It's in Otter Tail County. And the whole community worked together to open this childcare center. We worked with them. We worked with Barnesville, a community, another small community in Clay County. We've been working with Detroit Lakes and Becker County on their childcare shortages. And then we help them figure out how to solve that. And so part of that is us sharing our expertise and the data that is about the current capacity and the unmet need and other data information that they might need. One of our ECI coordinators, and she's in Pope County, she and the childcare licensor have weekly Zoom meeting calls with family childcare providers. So it's just another way that we connect and support providers. Most of the ECI, I'm going to use the term ECI as Early Childhood Initiative. So most of our ECI coordinators connect with the providers in their county via phone, texts, emails, and mailings, and often. The Traverse County ECI coordinator helped all of the providers sign on to the Child Care Aware Registry one summer. She's a early childhood special ed teacher during the school year. And then in the summer, she does a lot of childcare home visits. And some of the providers weren't feeling very comfortable with the internet and technology. And so Julie helped them with that. And that's just a common thing that they do in supporting providers in their communities. Next. Many of the ECI coalitions offer childcare program visits to share fun, unique learning activities with providers and children in their care. And this is a bus that Pope and Douglas County have purchased and changed into a playhouse or a tree house, I think they call it. And they go around to childcare homes and centers and do fun activities with kids. And sometimes they go to parks also to do that. So one local school district is using some of their ARPA, the federal COVID funding, to offer mental health services to pre-K children. And this wasn't done before that. So they've really been working with their schools and counties to encourage them to use ARPA funds for childcare. WCI has supported the childcare center directors in our region for over 25 years. And during COVID, we purchased a Zoom account for them so they can have virtual meetings. And that doesn't seem to like be a big deal, but it really was. It kept them, they're very supportive of each other. It kept them in connection with each other. And sometimes they even on Friday nights would have a happy hour and use the Zoom account just to have fun, which is a really important thing to do when you're working so hard. So we thought that was a really good use of our money, and it was a little bit of money. And then I've helped them coach them into becoming great advocates for themselves. In fact, I have sort of a funny story about that. I've been working with them to really advocate for themselves, and they did it so well that they invited 2 legislators to one of their meetings, and they got to talking about what they wanted as far as legislation. And so both of those legislators authored a bill, but it was something I didn't really agree with. And so and it's not about me, it's about what they need. And I was looking at it, like big picture, and they were looking at it like their day-to-day work that they needed this for. And so it was really a good thing to learn that just because you teach someone to advocate for something doesn't mean they're always going to agree with you. And so I had to work with the childcare center directors to kind of smooth that over, because they knew I didn't really like this legislation, and they did. And it's all cool now because, we have a good relationship, but it was just a funny story. I thought anyway. Next. At West Central Initiative, we work really closely with Childcare Aware, and in some states it's called Childcare Resource and Referral. So we helped create a new position at Childcare Aware. We had funding from the Department of Human Services actually to hire what we called a childcare supporter, and she helps people become licensed and then helps them with concerns that they have, even if they're already licensed. She'll help them with their environment to figure out, what toys they need and how they should arrange their rooms for the best results. And then we've had small grants available to purchase toys and equipment that they need to become licensed. So Childcare Aware and West Central Initiative work really closely together. We rarely write a grant without consulting with them first to see if they're going to, or see how we can work together, and they do the same for us. We also received grant funding to support Somali women in becoming legally unlicensed and legally licensed. And this project was also done by Childcare Aware and has become a full-time sustainable position working with new American communities, including the Latinx community. So we kind of start things, write grants for things, and then hand it over to someone, to an agency like Childcare Aware, because they're more equipped to do that. But it's, again, that partnership that is really supportive. So this is a picture of one of our projects. Years ago, our funder encouraged us to do a regional project, and we had been hearing that access to dental care was a real issue for children and families. And so we started the Early Childhood Dental Network. And it's a two-pronged approach. We provide access to dental care, mostly in schools, and it's available to children 0 to 18. And then we also have a person that goes out into childcare homes and centers and does a curriculum around oral health. And then she leaves a book, she leaves toothbrushes. Sometimes we've had like Play-Doh toys that around oral health. She's left those. So different things as kind of depends on if we have grant funding to pay for different kind of toys. So we work in many of our ECI coalitions, work closely with the respective counties to offer free mandatory trainings, as well as free trainings that increase providers' knowledge on brain development and the importance of social emotional development, children's mental health, and racism. So we've had a training for them on working with children whose parents are incarcerated. Last night, we just had a training for providers, and it was on social emotional development. And then they got free books and a CD with songs. And so we really try to meet the needs of providers. We've also had some free trainings for providers about social emotional health during COVID. Our ECDN, Early Childhood Dental Network, provides the childcare visits, as I said, and then we have also been helping some of our counties to open up permanent dental clinics, because as you know, in rural areas, it's hard to get access to dentists. And West Central Initiative, as well as the ECI coalitions, provide free trainings for providers. Next, WCI, the ECI coalitions and Childcare Aware worked together during COVID to distribute bleach, hand sanitizer, masks, and other COVID-related products. The ECI coordinators collaborate with childcare licensors and Childcare Aware to provide childcare appreciation events and activities. And this year we've been lucky, a health-related foundation is funding these activities in each one of our counties. It's called Essentia Health. Anyway, they contacted us and asked if we would like to write a grant for these activities. We advocate for providers through print, social media, phone calls, emails to legislators. I contact my legislators probably once a week, sometimes more. I testify at legislative hearings, meet with legislators, and help the organizations I am part of to create a public policy agenda. We have I'm the co-chair, of the Prenatal to 3 Coalition in Minnesota. I belong to the Start Early Funders. I'm a co-chair for transforming the early childhood workforce, and I help with public policy around Greater Minnesota Partnership. So we have this kind of two-pronged approach really about grassroots. So like, what can we do on a grassroots level? But we can't ignore what's happening on that grass tops, that government level. We have to be pushing for public policy to make the lives of childcare providers better. We have to work for them to be compensated better, to have benefits like healthcare and retirement, just like other people do in other jobs. So really that grassroots, grass tops. Yesterday, I was on a press conference with the Minnesota Attorney General's office to talk about women's economic security. I was on a year-long women's economic security task force, and we finished putting together a report of our suggestions and recommendations to the legislature. And yesterday, I got to be on a panel at the press conference to talk about childcare and women's economic security and the intersection between the two, because childcare shouldn't be a women's issue, but a lot of times it ends up being that. And Maria in the corner, she's our Childcare Aware director. And Marcia is my coworker, and the three of us, I would say we're cooks. We cook up a lot of things to do to help support childcare providers. Next.
Sorry, we're having some trouble advancing the slides. I think
Okay.
it might be an issue with the keyboard.
Yeah, when you're in early childhood, you have to be flexible. It's okay.
Yeah.
No problem. So I advocate on a local level. I have called all of our 9 county administrators and 53 of our city administrators to encourage them to support childcare with some of the CARES dollars. So I don't just do that, Juliana, on social media. I do it in person too. And then after CARES dollars, ARPA funds became available. And so I called the 9 county administrators again with to encourage them to use their ARPA funds to support childcare. And I know at least 7 out of our 9 counties are supporting and will be supporting childcare with these funds. And I also thought, well, they shouldn't just hear from me. So I encouraged others to contact the county administrators, city administrators, and their local schools to encourage them to use their federal COVID dollars to support childcare. And I think if they hear from enough of us, they'll probably do it. And ours have done it. So I'm also a liaison between the local, state, and federal work. And I really try to be a rural voice on the many committees and task forces that I'm on, because I don't know about your states, but Minnesota is a big state and a lot of things happen in St. Paul and Minneapolis, where St. Paul is where our capital is. So a lot of things happen there. And sometimes we feel a little forgotten out in rural Minnesota. So my kind of mission is not only to talk about childcare, but to talk about rural issues and rural childcare issues. And this picture on the bottom is actually our ECI coordinators, and it's not all of them, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, most of them. We were at an award. We got an award for our work that we did. So. Next. So what's next? West Central Initiative is embarking on a new project, and we're calling it Children's Mental Health, Getting Back on Track Through the Arts. And that will include local artists going into childcare centers to do things like make a COVID monster out of ice cream pails. And we're hoping to expand this to family childcare providers. Also, we got the grant to do work in childcare centers. Now we're working on a grant to do the work in family childcare providers' homes. But we're working with these 3 local artists. One is a visual artist, and one is does music with instruments. And then the other one does a lot of movement and dance. And so we're hoping to help children cope with what they've been going through, COVID in the last 2 years, and hoping to give this kind of a fun way to release some of that stress and worry. Do you want me to? I can answer that question right now. There was a question about using
Sure.
ARPA funds for mental health. And yes, one of our schools, Detroit Lakes, actually in Becker County, got their school to use some of their, I don't know if it was called ARPA funds, though it might have been GEARS, but it was federal COVID funding. And they are using that funding to get a mental health consultant, a mental health professional to work with preschoolers and their families. Does that answer your question? If not, I can go into it a little more. WCI has also contracted with someone to work with high schools to provide CDA, and that's Child Development Associate credentials. And then we're also having her work with high schools. If they don't want to do the CDA, they can also do early childhood credit classes. so that when students come out of high school, they're ready to work in the early childhood field and or ready to continue their early childhood education. West Central Initiative is also doing a pilot project with First Children's Finance, Wonder School, and Childcare Aware to see how we can further help childcare professionals deal with the business of caring for and educating young children. Sometimes the mostly women who do childcare are really good at nurturing and caring and educating young children, but not always, sometimes, but not always so good at the business side of it. So we're doing this pilot project to see how we can help them with that. And then we just heard this week that we were funded, Childcare Aware, and we as a partner are going to be doing a shared service pilot project. So working on that. And then another thing that's very exciting, and we're going to share it with childcare providers, is we published a children's book using a local author and local illustrator. And each page, or 2 pages, is about our county. So every county and White Earth has 2 pages of something that they would like people to see in their county that is free. And then there's a little activity you can do at home along with that. So we just got 7,000 children's books in our garage today. And so we're going to be figuring out how to get them out to providers and families so that they can read them and also do those activities. We really want people to see what wonderful things they can do in our region that are free and fun and getting out into nature. So that's kind of what's on our kind of docket that we are doing, will be doing. We're always open to like innovation. Like we're always got our ears to the ground, trying to hear like what providers are saying, what they need. I just had a call from a provider today and she was so excited because she got some grant funding to help pay her staff a little more. And, you know, it's so fun because we all work so hard together. And so when we get those gains and those wins, we like to really share with each other and celebrate that. And so I think of all the things that we do, the most important thing that we do is build a relationship with providers to let them know that we're in this together. And it's not only their responsibility. We want to help as much as we possibly can to make sure that they make enough money to do this important job that we all count on them to do. We want them to know that we acknowledge them. We care about what they're doing. And I think that's the most important thing. The other things are, you know, helpful, good, but really letting them know that we're there for them and that we care about what they're doing.
I love that, Nancy. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I have to say that the kids' book is one of my favorite things that you've told me that you've done, because it's just this beautiful blend of so many different parts of kind of rural vitality, right? Like you said, getting them out in nature and, you know, getting them in different counties that maybe they wouldn't have visited otherwise. And, you know, also giving the kids activities that are not screen related, and all of that is just really such a cool project. And so the other thing I'll say is that at this point, you know, we're really into discussion time. So we can open up to questions. We can also open up to anyone who would like to share what may be working really well for them in their areas. Like if you have a rural childcare model that is really working well, we'd love to hear about it. This is the time for all of us to kind of combine our resources. I have some models that from our area that I've kind of collected that I'm happy to share if things get quiet. But I know one of the initial comments that came in the chat was why our taxes pay for school K through 12, but not covered at all or fully for 0 to 4. And in a childcare symposium that I went to from that was put on by Vital Communities, and I know we have some Vital Communities folks on the call today, they shared a video about a community in Nebraska that is doing that, is expanding that care. I think diapers to diplomas is what they call it. And so I'm happy to share the link to that video. Afterward, we'll be sending just a whole list of resources that we have, and I'm happy to share that link at that time as well. So I think we're caught up on comments that have come in up to now. And so I'm just gonna, we can go gallery view and just, jump in if you have a question or if you want to share something that's working well where you are.
Juliana, can I make a comment about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I was just going to say that in our country, we have, as a society, decided that we are going to contribute to a child's education starting at 5 years old or 6, depending on kindergarten age. And as a society, we have decided that children 0 to 5 are parents, a family's responsibility. And I forgot to mention this, but we have a Rhodes Scholar this year from Finland. And, in their, I don't know if it's their constitution or what, but in their country, it is the right of every child to have care and education starting at birth. And that is something that is just so very different. We've been talking about, like what's the same and what's different from Minnesota to Finland. And really, that's probably the main thing. Like we care and educate children pretty much the same when we do it, but we don't have that, children don't have that right in our country until they're in kindergarten.
That's fascinating. Thank you. And Sarah, welcome. You have a question?
Thanks. Yes, and thank you for your remarks, Nancy. I'm curious if you or Childcare Aware have done any studies on the cost of high quality care. In other words, providing it, not what's being charged to parents, but that's something that we're trying to get a handle on. I'm working with a group of people in the Upper Valley, which is part of New Hampshire and part of Vermont, on the childcare crisis that we're experiencing in this region. And just curious if you or Childcare Aware have done any studies on this, and if so, if you can share them.
Yes, so the Minnesota Transforming the Workforce had a subcommittee that looked at this, and they put out a report, and I can get that to Juliana and she can share it with everyone on the webcast today.
Absolutely.
So I would be more than happy to share that study.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, because we definitely don't pay people what it costs to provide high quality care.
Right.
You're absolutely right. And if we are doing anything below that, we're not doing a service to the providers. We've got to figure out how much it really costs and then work towards compensating them for that.
Right, because right now we have a system that's subsidized by the low wages of childcare professionals.
Subsidized on the backs of women is what I always say, like, just because we love children, does that mean we shouldn't be able to make a good living at
Right.
loving and caring and educating children?
Yes. Right. Some of the most important work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Kaylee?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. This was such a good, so informative for me. I'm kind of new to the world of rural politics and rural childcare. So this was a great kind of intro. I'm kind of wondering, I'm joining from New York, and recently the legislature was kind of talking about, there have been conversations about sort of the professionalization of childcare. and how we're going to kind of like invest in that in New York over the next several years. So I kind of wonder, other than, you know, adequate compensation, and like maybe they're kind of talking about like pay parity with teachers. Teachers aren't paid enough either, I guess, but just things like that. And then kind of investing in workforce development are sort of where those conversations have been centered around. But I'm wondering if you have any other sort of ideas about professionalizing the field at all, ways to invest in that, or any other kind of, if anybody has any other sort of like legislative solutions that they've seen that work really well, or areas for improvement. I'd be interested in hearing any of that stuff.
Well, I'm just reading a really good book right now, and it's called, it's by Valora Washington and Brenda Gadsden, and it's called Guiding Principles for the New Early Childhood Professional. And in it, there's something that is said that I just think is so important, is that when we're professionalizing the field, we shouldn't look at the individual person and professionalizing them, because it makes them, it's a kind of a deficit way of looking at the work that they're doing. But how do we professionalize the whole system and the whole field? And then we also have to have really difficult conversations about family, friend, and neighbor providers, or sometimes they're called kith and kin providers. And how does that fit into this big picture? How do we make sure that wherever a child is the best place it could be, so that we don't pit one type of care over another, but there's this continuum of care, like family, friend and neighbor, licensed family childcare, childcare centers, school provided care and education, Head Start. They're all good, and we want parents to be able to have choices. So in those conversations, making sure that we take all those things into consideration. And I think as early childhood people, we're often so nice that we talk about each other behind our backs, but what we really need to be doing is having these tough conversations with each other behind closed doors. And then when we go out to the public to talk to the legislators, we look like we're more in line with each other, because what we don't want them to say is, oh, those early childhood people, they fight against each other. They don't know what they want. And so I'm just going to forget it. You know, I don't have time to deal with that. I'll deal with schools because they don't do that, or whatever. And so I think it's really, really important to have those tough conversations, have those conversations with people who are doing the work, as well as the advocates and the, you know, researchers, and then hashing those things out behind closed doors, and then coming out with as unified a voice as you can. And at least you can have a voice that says, this is what I want, and I'm not going to talk badly about an issue that someone else thinks is important. I don't know if I answered your question. And I don't know if you'll be getting my email address, but after this, anyone has questions, anyone ever wants to chat more, I love this topic, and I love to help, you know, if there's any way I can. So please feel free to just drop me an email.
That in and of itself is worth this whole thing to have you as a resource and a contact. Thank you so much. Before we take the next question, I just want to encourage everyone, if you can put your name and where you're joining from in the chat. Lillian will be plugging everyone's name into the wheel to spin for a free ticket to Radically Rural at the end. And so if you could go ahead and do that while we take the next question, that would be great. Amanda.
Yes, I have a question regarding I guess you could call it like activism for raising awareness around this issue and how to engage people with it, because one of the sort of issues that I sort of bump up against is this sort of and maybe it's just the sort of rural area that I'm from, this idea, especially regarding using our tax dollars for community benefit, in this case particularly childcare, this idea that it's socialism, and they instantly put it in that box, and then the door is closed. And there's no more that you can talk about because they have in their mind that this is something that's bad. I'm currently, I'm from DeSoto, Wisconsin, and I'll be moving back there in a couple months, but I've been living the last 7 years in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I work in childcare here as well. And one of the huge things that I notice, not just within childcare, but the entire society in Denmark and the Nordics in general, is this idea of society as a collective, rather than the very ingrained individualism that we tend to espouse to in the United States. And I think that is a big part of the heart of the issue of why it gets like overlooked and downplayed and is seen as being something that's not only not necessarily that important, but something that can be dangerous to society.
Well, I always try in those difficult conversations to look at it from their viewpoint, come at it from their viewpoint. I work with a legislator in my region, and she and I often don't see eye to eye on how to get there, but we definitely love children, and we really, really are passionate about helping childcare providers. And so that's our commonality, and that's how we can have good conversations. And so I think trying to find a nugget of how the two of you, or how you connect with someone, what is the commonality, what's the commonality in our humanity, and asking, sometimes do they have a child or do they have a grandchild that they want to talk about, and asking how, what their experience is with childcare and their family. Sometimes that helps. I think it's all about first building a relationship before you can have those tough conversations. And that, that takes a long time. Like I said, I contact my legislators almost once a week, and we have a relationship. They know me. And so I'm afforded a little bit more in the way of saying things to them now than I would have when I first met them. Because now they know who I am. They know, what I think and what I believe, and they know that I want to listen. I really do want to listen to their side of it, because if we only, sorry, I sound preachy, but when we come with a mindset that ours is the only way and the only right way, that turns people, stops the conversation. And together, when we compromise, we usually come up with something better than either one of us individually. I think so much of it is about caring about other people. Like, I really care about what you think. I really care about childcare providers. So let's have a conversation about how we can do this together.
Great, thank you.
I love that. And actually, one of the folks on the call today is a part of a group called the Current Affairs Collective, where we have folks from all sides of the aisle that come together monthly and talk about politics. And so April, if you want to give a wave, hello. And we have had that conversation a lot about focusing on values. And we find that we have so much more in common than we realize, even though we have very wide spectrum politically. And one thing that has helped is it's a closed group. So we have built relationships with each other, and we have that trust foundation that helps when we have difficult conversations. So I'd like to continue on the role that we're on. I also wanted to share a couple of thoughts that I had after being on the Vital Communities childcare symposium that I listened in on recently. There were so many creative solutions that were brought to the forefront from our area. And one thing that I love about Radically Rural is it's a way for our corner of the world to be on the receiving end of so many brilliant and beautiful ideas. And it's also a way for us to share out what's working for us in our area. So a couple of the models that I wanted to mention, and in the follow-up email with the resources, I will include more information. But one of the ones that I particularly liked was there's something called the Early Care and Education Association, and their primary goal is to create and sustain a network of early childhood professionals that demonstrates the collective power of collaboration in moving the needle on efforts to sustain, expand, and improve equitable access to early care and education. And some of the projects that they're working on, and how they're funded, by the way, is by a family foundation, because I know that's always a question of like, where the funding comes from. And some of the projects that they're working on is they focus on incumbent staff getting to lead teacher positions, because recruiting new lead teachers is really difficult. And I've seen that for the past few years on the board for the childcare center that I'm on. And they provide a lot of free coaching and training and increasing individualized support for the staff. And that way they can focus on hiring for more entry-level positions and helping, which is perhaps easier than recruiting for lead teacher positions. So that was one program that I thought was really interesting. They also have an apprenticeship program, and they have a project to support licensed centers in navigating the financial impact of the pandemic. So, organizations like the one that Nancy's a part of, and like this organization, those are just one way to approach supporting childcare. I completely agree with Nancy's opinion of the bottom up, top down approach. That's so important, where these grassroots efforts have to be happening in parallel to the legislative efforts. I also noticed, just with all the different models that that I've been exposed to, that it's almost like casting a wide net. There's not one solution to fixing this problem, but if you're approaching it from the standpoint of, all different kinds of funding that you can even think of, government approach, private organization, the childcare centers themselves, if you're really having this wide net, you're more likely to find some solutions. There's also a center that I can send some information on. It is a company that provides a childcare center to its employees, and they ensure that no one pays more than 12% of their gross annual income. So I'll send some information on that. And then there was a lot of government solutions that they're working on from a municipality perspective. And then that video on the Shickley, Nebraska public school system that I mentioned, the diapers to diplomas, I'll share about that. So there's some other models as well, but I just wanted to mention those that I found really interesting, because I know recruiting right now in the field is really tough. And I really liked that model of trying to encourage incumbent staff to get to that lead teacher position. So what other questions do folks have for Nancy? And does anyone have models from their own communities that they'd like to share briefly? We just have a few minutes left.
I did see a question.
Mm-hmm.
How Nancy's group is offering training for credentialing. I think maybe you mean the Child Development Associate credential. And we have a couple different ways we're doing that. We're working with the high schools to get them to provide them during students' high school years. And then we've also given grants to providers to go through the CDA training so they can do it at no cost. And we give the money up front so they don't have to put the money out and then get it paid for. So I'm not sure if that was what you meant in that question.
Yeah, you had mentioned you have a supporter. I think you called her a supporter. Oh. Yeah, I was just curious how that's working.
So the childcare supporter is been so successful that we had it through a grant. And then now the state is paying for that position because it has been such a successful model. And then we also contracted with a person to help schools set up the CDA programs in the high schools. And she just started, and our Minnesota Department of Ed has also been working on getting CDAs available in high schools. So our person is working with the Department of Ed. And if you go on the CDA website, they have a toolkit, kind of a manual on how to get those going in high schools.
One
so
of the
there's
things, oh, go ahead.
No, you just go ahead, Sarah.
Well, some of the high schools in our area are no longer offering a track for childcare because they say that the wages are so low that they can't, in good conscience, encourage students to go into the profession, which is just really disheartening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a reality. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I've, you know, had many of these conversations, like what's our moral responsibility, you know, to encourage people to go into a field that they aren't going to be able to make a living wage. So, you know, I think kind of like Juliana said, you know, that there's not one way to do things. We've got to be working on all of these fronts. And this is just one front to work on as we're pushing for better compensation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, our local high school took away their program, and our local state college also removed their degree. So that is really just compounding the problem, but also understandable in some ways. It's like, but we want to fix that problem. So there's one last question that I would also be interested in hearing about. And Nancy, the question is, has anyone heard of successes with or had experience with childcare co-ops? And since we're right at time, if anyone has information on that, if you could drop it in the chat or email it to me once we're done, I'd like to share that out too. I was actually doing some research on that prior to this because I'm also fascinated by that concept too. So if anyone has information on co-ops, if you could send it to me, I'll disseminate it to the group.
I think there was a childcare co-op in Minneapolis at one time. I'll see if I can find some information. I personally don't know anything about them, so I'll try to find it.
Thank you.
I want to quick give a shout out to my friend Allison Corrado from Blue Cross Blue Shield. She is my colleague and my friend, and we both work hard together on a lot of these projects. So
hi, Allison, and thank you for dropping all those links. That was great. All right, Lillian, would you like to share your screen and spin the wheel?
I feel like I'm on the Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah. All right, Veronica, that's our speaker for next month. Woohoo!
Woohoo! So I don't need a ticket for next month.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I hope you come. I think we'd be friends. We talked about that before. We have a lot in common.
I like to donate my ticket to any person you want for next month, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and actually that ticket is for the summit in September.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Okay. Didn't know it was for the summit. I missed that part. Okay, that's great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And Nancy, thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us. And we will be sending out resources to everyone who is on here today. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, Juliana. Bye-bye.
Bye.